Star Wars is so back right now. I mean, the vibes are so good. I mean, this felt like watching a Star Wars movie at several points throughout the episode. So you've got that going for you, but you also, you've got Jeremy Allen White as Stinky, Jabba the Hutt's son, Pedro Pascal filming The Mandalorian yesterday. The vibes just overall are just great with Star Wars right now.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're confused, Jeremy Allen White did not appear as Stinky in episode 3 of Skeleton Crew. You did not miss that surprise Easter egg and stuff like that. However, it is some casting news that we've heard for The Mandalorian and Grogu coming up. Just wanted to clarify briefly. But yeah, Pedro filming for Mando. Love to see that Din Djarin, his character is moving forward even in production. Yeah, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan. It's really starting to feel like 2015 again. There's an excitement in the air about Star Wars that, honestly, I haven't felt since last year with Ahsoka. Or, The Mandalorian season 3. And it just feels good that you've got something like Skeleton Crew to look forward to every week. And it's a banger. Every episode so far has just been absolutely awesome. I loved this episode. It was just a lot of fun. There was a lot of action. The pacing of this episode was incredible. Yeah. And like I said, it felt like I was watching part of a Star Wars movie and not necessarily a TV show. Yeah, for sure. And just the lore additions that were kind of briefly dropped in this episode, like the Jewels of the Republic. We'll have to talk about that at nauseum probably later.
Oh my gosh.
Because that drop felt like Peridia, learning about a new galaxy entirely in Ahsoka felt. Does that make sense? It's it's that much possibility. That, yeah. It makes me that excited for the stories we're going to get about this. Not even just in Skeleton Crew. I'm excited to see how At-Attin plays into it and all like that, but just for the future of Star Wars stories in general. We may be having more stories about secret important planets like this,
And that's so exciting because, both of us, we love things like that. And if you're new to the podcast, we are huge, huge fans of the old Republic era as well. And so that's exciting. And this is something that's new, and it might have some connections to things that were from the EU or the Legends timeline before Disney bought Star Wars that we maybe will draw some connections to and parallels to, or maybe some connections to the sequel trilogy. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about with the Jewels of the Old Republic on this episode, but then there's a ton that I think that we need to talk about with the parents of the Skeleton Crew and how that all ties in. And I think there's kind of a Wizard of Oz thing going on with the supervisor, and I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Several of the things that I've been theorizing about on previous episodes and stuff, I think have even more credence now. I definitely think the parents are going to be incredibly important to the plot going forward in Skeleton Crew in a way that I didn't necessarily envision at the beginning of the show, So that's kind of exciting too, that development. But
it's just all so exciting. This is such a good time, and I truly hope if you're listening, you're having as much fun as we are with this show. If you're not, maybe listen to the podcast, because there's a lot of things that I think we're going to discuss that were in this episode that on the surface you might think, I don't know how much was actually in there. There's actually a ton, and I cannot wait to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're listening to Children of the Watch. I'm Mac Lacey.
And I'm Alex Maxwell, and today we are breaking down the third episode of Skeleton Crew. If you're new to our podcast, we break down every single episode of Star Wars television, scene by scene, to analyze the story, find comfort Easter eggs, and explain how it all connects to the larger Star Wars universe. And we want to hear what you guys thought of this episode. What are your thoughts and theories on the Jewels of the Old Republic and how it connects to the larger Star Wars universe? How are you vibing with this show? So call into our Skelephone Hotline, 205-259-6675. That's 205-259-6675. Keep it under 3 minutes. If you mess up, hang up, try again. You could make it on to our voicemail hotline episode if you haven't listened to the last one, which honestly, it was so much fun.
Yeah, we got so many good theories, so many good calls. Keep those calls coming, y'all. It's been a fantastic, like, I feel like the speculation and everything coming into the voicemail is back to where it was during Ahsoka. Like, I think Ahsoka was our craziest episode or our craziest show for like speculation and things on the Skelephone, or it wasn't the Skelephone Hotline at that time, but so
yeah,
like last episode was such a blast. Listen to that if you haven't
so
yet,
good.
and keep those calls coming. And also like we're getting tons of good YouTube comments and stuff like that. Please keep those coming too. Like that's been a lot of fun to have that as a new avenue of engagement. So.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun just seeing all the YouTube comments and like the conversation going on in the YouTube comments. And sometimes like in your mind you might think, oh, that might not be a fun conversation in YouTube. It's a blast. We're having so much fun theorizing and talking and back and forth. So it's like become an extension of the Skelephone Hotline episodes that come later in the week. So it's been a lot of fun.
For sure. We may actually end up having to pull some from the YouTube comments for the Skelephone episodes just here and there because we get some really good stuff coming in. But yeah, for sure. So yeah, thank you guys so much for the engagement already. I'm excited to do the rest of Skeleton Crew with you, Alex, and with the audience.
Absolutely. And then you can also follow us over on our social media platforms at COTWatch on X, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Instagram. We've been upping our game, especially on TikTok and Instagram with the Reels or the TikToks and YouTube Shorts and stuff. It's really funny because you can tell which ones that Mac makes, incredible, and then the ones that I make, and it's just like brain rot. It's a good mix. I feel like
the duality of man. There are two wolves inside of us.
I feed a
Listener,
different wolf
there
than
are
you.
two wolves inside of you. One of them is me, and one of them is Alex. So.
It's a lot. It's a lot of fun. They're loath wolves though. So yeah, definitely check us out on those platforms at COT Watch. And then if you're watching Dune Prophecy, check out our friends Oysters, Clams, and Cockles as they're doing pretty much the same thing we're doing with Skeleton Crew and any Star Wars television show. They're going scene by scene to analyze Dune Prophecy. So if you're watching that, definitely check them out. But I think it's time to jump into this breakdown because I'm really eager to talk about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should wait no longer. Let's get into it.
So this is episode 3, and again, the naming convention of these episodes are basically, it's something that's said in the episode itself.
Yeah, I love this. I like that it's something different for Star Wars TV. We haven't had this before, but it's also fun just now knowing how they're named, like guessing how the line is going to come up in the episode after you see it. You know, that's been kind of a fun game.
That has been fun. So this one's called Very Interesting as an astrogration problem. That's a hard word to say. Astrogration.
Astrogation, I think.
There's an R in it. There's an R
so
after
weird.
the G.
I would think it would just be like astrological navigation.
Yeah. That's it.
Astrogration is strange. I don't know.
That is strange. Director is David Lowery, the same person who directed the last episode. You can kind of feel that carryover. Very, very good with the action and the pacing of this episode, I thought. I love it.
Yeah, the editing I love the snappy pace they're keeping with everything. I love that we don't see every single bit of action. Like they just keep the story moving. Like we don't need to know how these characters get from point A to point B or like those kind of things. I love that we're just cutting straight to the juicy bits and not worrying about the connective tissue.
And that's what happens like right after the recap. We just jump right into the episode and we get started. So that's one of the highlights, I think, of this episode in particular. We get the scope of the city of At-Attin, and everything kind of looks the same except the tower. Like there's a very kind of we built this to not stand out. Here's a city layout, and then you got the tower in the back. But one thing that I noticed, Mac, is like nobody's really on the street. Nobody's driving around. The sun is setting. It makes me wonder if there is some sort of curfew in effect on At-Attin that maybe is happening because the ship left, or it's because like this is just a natural rhythm of the planet.
Yeah, it almost seemed more like the latter to me. Like there kind of was a curfew, but it wasn't imposed by like legislation and enforced martially. It was more of a social curfew. Like there does not seem to be nightlife on At-Attin. Doesn't seem like, there are careers that keep you, at work past dark kind of deal. So I wonder if it's more of just like the society has kind of been molded in a certain way that, it's a 9 to 5 thing. And then everybody goes home to their perfect little domiciles. And I don't know. Either way is an interesting, new bit of information about their home world.
Yeah. And so we see a safety droid patrolling the empty streets, and then we cut to Fern's neighborhood, and we see the safety droid walking towards their house. Inside, Wendell, Wim's father, sits with his head cocked at an angle as the other kids' parents just absolutely freak out, which they should be. I would be too. And they're all doing this in front of that mural. And we had a very interesting discussion about that mural on our voicemail episode last week that you should absolutely check out. But I think there's something big to that mural, and we're going to talk about another painting that was on the scroll of the Jewels of the Old Republic. I think there's a connection there. But yeah, he's sitting there. The parents are freaking out. Neil's mother, Numa, brings Wendell some tea. Farah, Fern's mother, is convinced that the safety droids will find the kids. And then KB's parents seem extra concerned. Did you pick up on that? Like they are the ones who are kind of freaking out the most out of the group of parents.
Yeah, it was, they were talking about like not being able to find a signal from her. Like I think from the hardware that's attached to her head and stuff. I think there are like vital monitoring functions of that, or like maybe GPS tracking and stuff. I almost wonder if that, we've been wondering why KB has that on and like how integrated it is with her and stuff. I wonder if it's almost like a device for helicopter parenting. Like,
so I think it's a little bit of both, because I wrote in my notes, okay, so they've lost the signal to KB's life monitor. And I put the question is that just to keep up with her, or is this a suggestion that she has some kind of medical condition? And so I wrote that in my notes as I was watching it the second time. And then I picked up on a line later in this conversation. They do say that she does have a medical condition.
Oh, okay.
So there's something up that we haven't seen from KB's side with her, that the parents are extra worried about, like, hey, this could happen, if we don't get back to her.
Yeah, that's interesting, just as kind of, seeding some stakes to come up later. I assume that will probably become, a point of conflict in one of the episodes to come. If there is, like, if this is a device that's either to monitor or to help treat, like, a medical condition, something like that, and maybe it goes haywire in some way, and, who knows? But that's an interesting development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like how this episode, like, it was mainly about Jod Na Nawood, right? Like, it was like his episode, but like if you were going to focus on any of the kids, it seemed like KB was the one who was the kid who was kind of like the lead of the episode, in terms of we focused a little more on her than the rest of the kids. And I like that. And I think, again, there's kind of like a subtle thing that they're doing is to set the stakes for something later to happen with her medically. So keep an eye on that. Farah mentions that when she was a girl, she and her friends would run away and the safety droids would always find them. So
That gives us a little bit of chronological information. We know that the safety droids have been here monitoring, keeping the peace in the same way that they are now since at least Farah was a child,
Right.
So that gives us a little bit of, we know at least things have been the way they are on At-Attin for, I'd say 20 years, maybe,
at least.
or more.
Now, I would say minimum. That this episode would lead more credence to what we were saying before the show began in our speculation. No, this is an ancient place. It is an ancient place. They Kim, the owl, later even mentions that it's proto-republic. So it's old. So we'll talk about that later. But that's interesting. But the way that things are now with the safety droids and the supervisor, it's been that way for a while, it seems like, at least, like you said, a generation. But I also found it interesting, Mac, that Farah used to be a lot like Fern. Right? Yeah. Like she used to go out with her friends and get lost and stuff. And I feel like that represents the loss of adventure in Farah. She used to be like Fern, but she grew up. So there's kind of that hook element as well.
I like that. It's really interesting because this is the first time we've seen this group of parents assembled, right? We haven't seen all of them together in the same room like this, with a common goal yet. When I was watching this scene, it really made me think that there's probably going to be a B plot going on for the rest of the show where the parents are investigating and discovering things about At-Attin from their side of the barrier as the kids are also doing that from outside of the barrier. So I think between plot points that involve the parents investigating At-Attin and the supervisor and, going to see how they can get help for finding their children and stuff like that. I think that's going to give us probably just as much information about the history of At-Attin as the kids' explorations out there in the stars,
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I think that's an important element to continue with the show. And Stranger Things does a very similar thing where it doesn't just focus on the kids, it also focuses on their parents as well, because it's let's be for real here. If all this was happening to kids, the parents are going to be involved in some capacity, right? They're going to be, because they're invested in their kids. So they kind of end up as part of the adventure as well. You see that in Stranger Things every season. One of the parents is really, really helping out. So I like that because that means we're going to get more answers on At-Attin.
Yeah, for sure. I've made allusions to Finding Nemo before about kind of the plot of Skeleton Crew, right? With Wendell specifically, I think, and now I think all the parents are also involved in what I was kind of theorizing about. But I think Finding Nemo, when Marlin goes looking for Nemo, he's learning and we're learning as the audience about the wider world at the same time he is. And we're watching Nemo discover the same things or different things in the same manner. So I think that we're going to have A plot with the kids, B plot with the parents on At-Attin. By the end of it, between the events of those two parties, we'll be able to put the mystery together.
Absolutely. So the safety droid enters having been sent by the supervisor, and the safety droid announces, "Your children are on a starship that has illegally exited the barrier." Wendell asks if the supervisors are going to contact the Republic for help. So there's a major clue, Mac. The adults, or at the very least, at least not Farah, think that they're operating under the old Republic government, not the New Republic government, because everyone in the New Republic calls it the New Republic. They don't call it just the Republic. So they have no idea the extent of what has happened with the Empire and stuff.
Yep. And we get further confirmation of that later in the episode too, from Kim, that they don't have knowledge of the fall of the Republic. So that's a big clue. But that still doesn't narrow down the time period as to a point of being very helpful, because the old Republic, is old, and it went on for a super long time.
25,000 years.
Yeah, so, somewhere in there, ballpark estimate, anywhere in, the span of 25,000 years or so, we know when At-Attin was isolated.
Yep. But the safety droid says that due to them being outside the barrier, they can't risk contacting anyone, and KB's parents freak out. And this, real quick, one of KB's parents says, "Our daughter has very urgent medical needs," and you might miss that.
I think I did on my first run through.
Yeah,
so
there's confirmation.
It's good to have confirmation of that. That'll definitely be important going forward.
Absolutely. So Farah says that she will petition to talk with the supervisor, and that's kind of another clue of like, okay, so Farah doesn't have unlimited access to the supervisor, kind of further going to your theory of like, whoever the supervisor is, it might be like just a computer or a droid or something just running the system. And there's I also kind of picked up on a Wizard of Oz type vibe of like someone who's hiding behind a title and power, and it might not be someone who's like you would expect in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I think they're also kind of off to see the wizard. Like Farah has to go consult the supervisor about what to do, try to get assistance. Like they need something from the supervisor without knowing really who it is. We don't know exactly the knowledge that the parents have of the supervisor, but the way they're discussing the supervisor, it doesn't suggest they know a whole lot more about that individual than we do.
They don't do like Christmas parties with the supervisor.
No, they don't have statues of the supervisor. No, like the supervisor has never posed for portraits. I don't think. Like I don't think they're making addresses on the HoloNet for At-Attin or anything. Like,
no.
I think you're spot on with the Wizard of Oz connection.
Yeah. So she's going to petition to talk with him, and the safety droid reminds them that contact, travel, all forbidden, and any violation is going to result in security action. So again, there's a kind of that more sinister vibe of like, yeah, what's going on At-Attin is not good, and they don't even kind of realize it really. But Wendell, I think, is starting to, because he removes his glasses as he sits, kind of realizing the severity of the situation. And then we cut to black title credits, Skeleton Crew. And when we open back up, we're in Borgo Starport. Got some more information on Borgo Starport, Mac. We mentioned on our voicemail hotline that it is a reference to Legends, and it was in the Young Jedi Academy books and stuff. Do you know who founded Borgo originally? This is really cool. The Rakata.
Ooh, interesting. So real fast, if you haven't listened to our Mythology 101 episodes, which you should, I think it's becoming ever more present. Like I'm so
glad
gonna lie,
we were spot on those.
Yeah, it's prescient, I think. But yeah, go and listen to that. We talk about the Rakatan Empire, or the Infinite Empire, as it's also known. They at one point had basically conquered the galaxy. They were beings that were kind of inherently aligned with the dark side of the Force. They pioneered a lot of like the first hyperspace travel and stuff like that in the galaxy, and then eventually just kind of vanished due to one reason or another. There's a lot of different things people attribute their downfall to, but it's kind of a mystery too. But yeah, just getting any kind of connection, even from Legends. So like a Legends stuff is not part of the continuity right now, but it's been proven over and over that they love to pull ideas and stuff kind of whole cloth from Legends and bring them over in any way that fits the current story that they can. Thrawn and stuff like that is a big example. So yeah, just getting another connection to the Infinite Empire, to the Rakata. Our first was in Andor.
Bring it.
So like, yeah, let's continue that. I think we're going to see the Rakata at some point on screen. Like,
if James Mangold makes his Dawn of the Jedi movie, that's the bad guy.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Which that's a cool prospect.
Let's go. So we're back in Borgo Spaceport, and our view descends to the underbelly beneath the dock. In the brig, a Constable Zuvio wannabe shocks Bing Bong from inside out.
Let's unpack that last sentence. Hold on. So Constable Zuvio is from The Force Awakens. He's got kind of that big flat hat type deal. It's almost like a mix between like a I don't know. It's like kind of a tri-corner hat also. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what they look like. I would never have called this creature Bing Bong, but you're exactly right.
He looks like Bing Bong to me. He gets shocked, and then Jod uses the distraction to lead the kids across the hallway. KB hesitates, afraid that she's going to be seen, and Jod comes back and lifts his hand. And he uses the Force to cause a distraction that the two guards hear and run off. So I think a question the show wants us to ask is, can Jod really use the Force? And I think he can.
I think he can. To me, this episode was the show trying to confirm that he can. We're seeing him do stuff other than just lifting the key. We have speculated on other possible ways he could be doing that other than using the Force. Fern also gives some
she's a little
explanations
podcaster
later. Yeah, she would be a great guest for Children of the Watch, I think. Like Fern the character.
yeah, she would.
But I think because he's also doing the distraction thing and it seems like he's doing all of this in the moment, it's spontaneous. It couldn't have been pre-rehearsed to me. He couldn't have set stuff up to give these illusions the whole way. That just does not make sense. So I think the show is saying he definitively can use the Force. The question I think this episode wants us to ask is he a Jedi? Because I think that's the more important question to the story.
Absolutely. I just love it. It's really, really cool. KB crosses as the kids are amazed because he does the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. Obi-Wan Kenobi did that in A New Hope where he kind of makes a noise somewhere down the line and the guards go to see it. KB crosses and Jod is only interested in getting to their ship, but Fern says that they'd never agreed to give him a ride, and KB asked the obvious question. If he could escape at any time, why does he need their help? And he replies that he needed their ship. Basically, he had no reason to leave until now because there's a way to actually leave. And so he's tapping away at the control panel, and he says, I waited. The Force provided. And I love, he's just playing this role mainly for Wim. No one else buys it but Wim.
Yeah, but that's all he needs to keep the group kind of strung along. Yes. He just needs that one individual's buy-in. I love this approach. He is being very Jack Sparrow to me. There's this huge improvisational air he has, and I don't know, I love if he's being sincere. I don't think he's being sincere by saying I waited, the Force provided.
No,
but for a second, if we go there and think if he is actually being sincere, the idea of a pirate relying and trusting on the Force to guide him to his own personal rewards and gains and stuff, that idea is just very funny and intriguing to me.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. Fern is already on to him, though, thinking that he just wants the treasure on At-Attin, and she's like, there is no treasure there, just so you know. And the kids discuss if they can really trust him, and Wim is defending him at every turn, reminding them that he is a Jedi. And then he introduces himself as Jod Na Nawood. And he's able to deactivate the laser gate, and they hide as another guard walks past with a prisoner. And Wim is just in awe. He cannot believe, like, wow, he stopped because he felt people coming. It's not because he heard them, he felt them coming. Saying that he could sense them. And I love Jod's just like, you know much of the Force.
just feeding the enthusiasm, just playing into it. I love it. Like, Wim, it's so funny how wrapped around his finger he has Wim without Wim realizing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good. Jod pursues one of the guards as the kids debate if they should trust him, and then they hear a scuffle, and Jod comes back into view with a blaster, and he offers them two paths, one with people and one without. And as they're talking, they're forced to duck back as a spherical droid floats by. And then Fern says, KB must have the Force too for detecting the droid. And Jod smiles. The Force flows through us all. Just real quick, that the little antagonistic relationship between Jod and Fern is great. I love it. Like, that's one of the best parts of the episode.
Absolutely, especially because she is technically the captain, and like that adversarial relationship is just very funny to me. And just the smart alecky nature of the Force flows through us all, as like, I don't know, this is a seasoned con man. Like,
yes.
He has been getting by on charm and guile for his entire life, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. It's also funny to me because there's a saying that if we were not a family-friendly podcast, I would use, but basically, you can't lie to a liar. That aspect with Fern is fun because I think Fern can pick up on Jod's con better because she herself is always trying to get one over on everybody. So yeah, that's a very fun adversarial little dynamic.
That's a really good point of, okay, she can spot it because she does it all the time. Yeah. So then Jod leads them through the port with his hood over his head. And there's something that struck me about this scene in particular, something very cinematic about it all. This is where I'm watching a Star Wars movie right now. It felt like something out of A New Hope, and there's this funny moment when Neil almost gets lost before Jod comes back and turns him around, and the music is so good. Mick Giacchino is doing such a good job. The music is just incredible, and he's his composing, he sounds just like his dad. It's so good. I cannot wait to listen to this Star Wars music when it all comes out. I think one of the themes is already out, on Spotify and stuff like that. But I can't wait to listen to this music over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I say this almost every time a new show comes out or anything, but Star Wars music always has a very particular job to do, which is evoke Star Wars, because it is the music is a spiritual center for the entire franchise, so it does have to feel like Star Wars, remind you of all the other Star Wars stuff, but it has to do that all while bringing something new and something tailor-made to fit the current story on screen. And I think this it threads that needle perfectly. I know I sound probably pardon the additional music pun, but a broken record. Because I say this for almost every new score, but it's because I think Star Wars understands the important job that the music has, and I think they take that seriously, and I think they deliver on it almost every time.
Oh, it's so good. I'm just really extra impressed with this music in this show. So there, and again, it's one of those it just makes you feel good type thing, just like the show. So then we cut to a dinghy flying out, and our wee ferryman is back. He's got several names. Jeff is what Ozzy. Star Wars Ozzy. We love this guy. I love you so much. Jod asks which ship is theirs. He's kind of excited as he's looking at all the different ships. And then Fern admits that it's a wreck and probably shouldn't even fly. And Neil points out that it smells funny. And Jod doesn't think it can be that bad until he sees it. And somehow it's just like dirty in space. It's just like got dirt all over it.
There was so much earth and everything just like caked into it that upon entering zero gravity, all of it is just emanating off of the ship in a big cloud. It's almost a rite of passage for a Star Wars thing to talk about a ship being terrible. The Millennium Falcon, case in point, right. So this felt very Star Wars, but also like it fits the what has happened on screen. So
it kind of reminds me of the Knights of Ren ship, where it's like, how like it just has diesel coming out of it in space. Like,
yeah, it looks like a Reaver ship from Firefly, like in the way it just it looks like an ecological nightmare, like even in its afterburner and stuff.
It's great. Inside the ship, Jod sits at the controls and he tells them that he knows just where to go. He's got an old friend of his that she's an expert on star maps, lost planets, that kind of thing. And Mac, immediately my jaw dropped and I was like,
yep.
Are we doing Dr. Aphra right now?
That's exactly where my mind went as well. I've been eager for Dr. Aphra to show up. If you don't know, she's a character primarily from comics. She's a great character. Some of my favorite Star Wars comic stories come from her lines. But she's basically like an Indiana Jones type figure. She's like an archaeologist / treasure hunter kind of thief. But she's got more of like a technological bend towards stuff. So like she would definitely be, an expert on treasure hunting, finding maps, lost planets, all of that kind of stuff. So like that's absolutely where my mind went. I also think she's just kind of primed for making a live action appearance soon, Yeah. But yeah, I definitely thought we were going Dr. Aphra.
But like, regardless of who we were going to, I was excited because that's like my kind of thing too. Like I love star maps, lost planets. Like we grew up playing Knights of the Old Republic, and that's pretty much the entire premise of the game is finding something that's lost. And so like I knew, I was like, okay, we're getting into the really good stuff here, and I could not wait. But the kids were worried about leaving behind SM-33, and I do want to point out that, yes, we are aware that it spells out SME, and we have not pointed that out in a while, because Mac actually like spotted that way back when I think the first teaser even came out. Yeah, you had noticed that, and I did not notice that, and we just haven't mentioned it because a lot of people kind of like, hey, have you seen? We have. We just forgot to mention it.
Yeah, it's just something that has been in our heads for long enough now that we don't talk about it anymore. Yeah, but it's me for sure.
Yeah. So Jod says they'll be fine without him, and Fern says that the Jedi never leave a man behind. But Jod points out that it's not a Jedi saying, and I think this is just great acting by Jude Law. The interplay between him and all the kids. Jude Law is doing an incredible job of just like elevating what's going on, because the kids are great, but like the way Jude is playing off of them is even better.
Absolutely. I definitely think he's the perfect casting for this job, because he has to be a character who's believable as this, like, kind of this scoundrel, this like grizzled worldly character that's, been around the block a few times and all that kind of stuff. But he has to be able to relate to these kids and be somebody that these kids can at least kind of trust in the moment, So I think Jude Law was a perfect choice for casting. He's doing such a good job of acting like he's acting. Like, I know exactly when the character is putting on a front for the kids and when he's having a genuine interaction with somebody else, we like, especially with Kim later. And then, also the I can't remember his name at the moment, but the old crewman and stuff. In those interactions, he has a very different persona than when he's talking to the kids. So I think that like that line is being walked very well. It's a good balance being struck. Like, I can tell he's a character who's acting in the story a little bit,
Yeah, and I love it. Like you said, he's the perfect casting for this. He's doing so great. So the kids basically force him to go get SM-33 because they can't leave without him. And he agrees, but leaves them behind. And as he's preparing to leave, Neil says, "Oh, and don't forget about the rat that lives in his eye hole." Yeah. Just a great line from Neil.
That the rat is just as important of a member of the crew as anyone else. So, make sure you get him.
Yeah, Jod warns them not to touch anything. They don't want to blast off without him. But as soon as he leaves, Fern says that's exactly what they should do. We should blast off without him. Because she's kind of picking up on there is something not right with him.
Exactly. Again, she, because of her own nature, can spot his act,
Yeah.
It's
so we Star Wars cut to Jod back walking through the port as someone announces that Silvo has escaped from the brig. They're announcing it to everyone in the port, confirming that Jod is indeed Silvo. They're the same character. Everyone knew that, but we needed the confirmation.
This is for sure in stone now. They're the same person.
And he's got several names too, which is fun.
Yes.
We don't really know which one's your real name. Who are you really?
And this is also giving credence to your theory that Jod Na Nawood is just a name he made up on the spot. I think he needed something that sounded Jedi-ish, right? He's like, okay, these kids need to see a Jedi in me. I'm going to pick a name that sounds like it could be a Jedi.
Maybe it's his former master if he is a Jedi.
Yeah, who knows?
I want to throw this out because I don't want to forget it. There's a possibility that he's not a Jedi and that he's a former Inquisitor, and that we didn't really talk about.
That would be kind of the other avenue for a trained dark side user, in the same way that you would have Padawans, but that wouldn't be a major character that would be missed. Too bad if they went missing from the galaxy,
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's really interesting. We've seen what Jedi who have to do stuff after Order 66. We haven't seen a story about Inquisitors having to make a life for themselves after the fall of the Empire. That's an angle we haven't seen at all. So that'd be an interesting thing to explore with Jod.
Yeah. So Jod slips into a droid repair shop and he turns on the first one and immediately turns that one back off. I'm assuming solely based on the voice of that droid. Can't handle that droid. He gets to the next droid, turns it on, and it immediately announces that the prince is in danger. We must save the prince. We must go this way where I can't see. And I love little details like this because that droid story is one day going to be told, and I love that about Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really cool. I'm wondering what prince is he talking about? Exactly. He was obviously deactivated in the middle of a big happening. So I want to see that story, and I think we will. They don't really seed something like this without intention to make good on it later.
Yeah, I just love things like that. And it's because I'm already building the backstory in my head of what adventure is that? That's a separate thing that we're not going down that path,
Yeah. I was also racking my brain for old Clone Wars episodes and stuff like that this droid could fit into possibly, or who knows? There's all kinds of explanations, but
the only thing that came to my mind was an old EU book series that was a kid series called the Jedi Prince series, and it was about Ken Palpatine, which was it was Emperor Palpatine's grandson, Ken, and
you're just Ken. I'm just Ken.
I love that his name's just Ken Palpatine. But we pretty much get that story later in the sequel trilogy, so it's coming.
Pretty much.
All right, so then he gets to the B1 battle droid and flips it on, and it asks, "Did we win?" before completely falling apart. That was a nice little touch too.
my headcanon was this droid was deactivated when Anakin destroyed the droid control ship in Phantom Menace. Like, this droid's
Nice.
last memory was fighting a bunch of Gungans.
And I love that it's like a real, it's not CGI, right? Like
Yeah.
they built that B1 battle droid and it just like completely falls apart. Like just kind of showing you like, that's the reason, you know, they don't use droids as their soldiers is because they're cheap. They're mass produced. They can't really hold together, but then he sees SM-33 hanging on chains and he powers it on and figures it out after the rat pops out, and he turns SM-33 back off and starts putting him on a hover cart when someone appears behind him, and it's an Ishi-Tib pirate walking with a cane. I think this is a different Ishi-Tib pirate than the first two episodes.
I didn't notice the eye wound, so that would have already taken place. I think it's a different crewman.
This is Benjar Pranic, and he says, Benjar Pranic, you old blood. And Mac, this is Alfred Molina voicing Benjar, and that is a really, really cool. I think that means we're getting more of him down the line.
Yeah. If you don't know, Alfred Molina plays Doc Ock in in Spider-Man 2.
He's also in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The first opening part.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I like that. Also, like, that's significant casting, you know, for a pretty side character. Unless Alfred Molina was just like really wanting to be in Star Wars or something. Like, I think we might get a little more of that character.
I think so, and he seems to be a contemporary of old Rava. Like I get the sense that they're good friends. Like back when they were younger.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean Rava's probably still older than this individual, but I think this Ishi-Tib probably met him at a much earlier point. They sailed together on some ship for a while. They still whenever they're at port at the same time, they'll meet up for a mug of spotchka.
Yeah. I don't know. You get the sense that this is like the seasoned crewman who's always loyal to whatever captain there is. I'm like, this character is in every pirate story of like, can you trust him? He seems like a grandfather type thing that you can rely on, but he's still a pirate. So it's like, I love that aspect of this character already.
He's the Mr. Gibbs character,
yes.
Like from Pirates of the Caribbean a little bit. He's because like Mr. Gibbs is friendly to Jack and like understanding to his plight and stuff, but he's at first they're not on amicable terms,
right?
Just because of loyalties and stuff like that. So I think we'll probably see this character again in the show, like if I had to guess.
I think so. He invites Jod to sit down and have some tea while they talk, and Benjar says, always a fire in your belly and a mad scheme in your heart. And I wish that would be said of me from people. What a great way to like, hey, this is what I think of you.
Put it on my tombstone is how I feel about it.
Benjar says that he's the best skipper he ever had, and he questions why Brutus would let him out right before his trial. But Jod says that he may have finally found the big score he's always promised. Benjar asks if it has anything to do with the children that showed up, and Jod tells him not to report that he's out. And Benjar isn't going to let him get away with it. He kind of is like, listen, I've got to tell Captain Brutus. And so inside the ship, the kids have their own little podcast session and discuss whether or not Jod can use the Force. They're throwing out all the theories. Some of the theories we even mentioned, the tractor beam, magnets. They even say like maybe a string, and they're like, a string, really, a string,
a really thin string. It's like all the classic objections people raise to like stage magic. It's like, it's just mirrors and fishing line or whatever,
Yes, yeah.
So I like that. I like that the kids are asking the same questions we were asking. I think we now have kind of the convenience of the dramatic irony of knowing he can use the Force. Like, we've watched more Star Wars than these kids have. Like, we know the rules a little bit better, even though they're in the world.
They don't know about Max Vibroblade yet,
right?
And Max
Correct.
Vibroblade says he can use the Force.
Yeah, the most Star Wars answer is probably the right answer. Is Max? It's akin to Occam's razor, but
yes, yeah. So they're talking about all the theories, and as all of this is happening in the background, a dinghy is weaving in and out of blaster fire. Inside, Jod is with SM-33 racing back to the ship. Jod attaches to the ship and pulls in SM-33. He's like just dragging him and then afterwards they race to the cockpit and try to take off, but they're stuck on the fuel line. I thought this was a kind of a really fun scene here, and he complains about how well made the fuel line is. Like, wow, this is really tough here.
It implies that he has tried this exact thing before and has always been able to break the fuel line, but this time it is not. It's not working.
Yeah, and so Jod orders Wim to take the controls, and then he starts to set in the hyperspace controls and coordinates, and he pushes the throttle, and they go to hyperspace before the cannon can fire on them, and the fuel line snaps back into the port, taking out several pirates as they jump away. And then Brutus mentions putting a bounty on the kids. And I just got to say, this opens the window for our favorite bounty hunter potentially being in this show.
You're talking about Toro Calican, of course, right?
Of course. No, of course. Din.
Yeah, obviously we're talking about Dengar.
No, not Dengar. But that would be cool, actually. I would not hate Dengar being in it, being played by what's his name, Nick Frost's buddy. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do you know who I'm talking about? What is it? He's in Star Trek. He's in Mission Impossible. He's in
Chris Pine?
No.
Is he
the funny guy? The funny guy. He's Scotty in Star Trek. He's in the new Star Trek movies.
Simon Pegg.
He's
already Unkar Plutt.
I know, but he's always wanted to play Dengar, and I think this would be a perfect opportunity for him to play Dengar.
That'd be good. That'd be fun. No, but we're of course talking about Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself.
This guy. I just pointed to my Mandalorian helmet on the YouTube stream. But so I think it opens the door. I'm not expecting it, but I think the door is open for at least some maybe familiar bounty hunters to pop up in the next few episodes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different, possibilities. I think Fennec Shand is a very unlikely possibility because she's kind of tied up with Boba at this point in the timeline, I believe. But that'd be, she's a Mandoverse bounty hunter that would be fun to, I'll see Ming-Na Wen in anything.
Absolutely.
Cad Bane is another. Do we know when this takes place?
I think it's got to be after season 3 of The Mandalorian. So that would be. But is he actually dead? Who knows? No one's truly gone in Star Wars. So they jump to hyperspace, and where am I? Later, the kids turn SM-33 back on as Jod fixes food. Even SM-33 is wary of Jod being a Jedi, and I love this little moment of Jod eating. We spend time just watching him eat this oatmeal, and everyone's watching him as Neil rubs his belly, and you can kind of hear his stomach grumble a little bit as they're watching him eat. And he then orders SM-33 to clean the bowl, and he tells the kids that there's more in the pot. And I love this little addition of he's kind of taking care of them, being their pirate dad in a way.
Right. At first you think he's being terrible. He made himself food and is eating it in front of all these hungry children, right? And you're like, this is for sure not a Jedi thing to do. But then it's revealed, no, he's made enough for everybody. You're spot on. He's being pirate dad. He's taking care of people without overtly trying to be affectionate or protective in any way, So So it's a very, very good little beat there.
Yeah. And so they're racing to get some food as Jod goes off to investigate the rest of the ship, and he's looking for clothing. He finds a coat, some boots, and then he sees the sword stuck in the dead skeleton, and he takes the bro sword, and SM-33 confronts him. SM-33 kind of takes this time to confront him, and they have a moment of challenge, and Jod smiles, patting him on the shoulder. And Jod asks if the kids are really from At-Attin. And then SM-33 says, I love this line from him. He says, I'll tell you what I know and mark my words, for I won't be repeating them again. They're definitely from somewhere. Aye. And then he walks away and he comes back and he says, aye.
You best start believing in ghost stories, lassie. You're in one.
I love this, though, because it's like, I think it's cool because SM-33 is saying, listen, it doesn't really matter where they're from because like they're from somewhere. So remember that, you know, like he's kind of like threatening, like, don't try anything on these kids.
Right. It means a lot while like he doesn't say much by this, but he's implying a lot, right? He's implying, like you said, like, hey, don't mess with these kids. Like they have people that care about them and stuff like that. Like they're from somewhere. But also, it's like, hey, they got here somewhere, and there's like a big mystery surrounding this, and they showed up in this old Republic ship and stuff. Like, you know, they're from somewhere. There is a mystery at the end of this. It might be worth tagging along and investigating. So he's kind of saying both things with that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Neil feeds the rat some food, and the kids continue their podcast. They ask if there's really treasure back on the planet, and Neil points out that it might have something to do with the great work. Then they realize that they don't even really know what their parents do, but they all work with money. So what does this mean, Mac? Because, you know, if you go back to the first episode, the droid is talking about the fungibility of different funds and money and beyond the barrier and stuff. Are they like, is At-Attin like funneling money to someone outside the barrier? What's going on here?
So it's really unclear. I think this is for sure. Like, I think Neil is spot on. Whatever the great work is, it has to do with like why everybody wants to get to At-Attin. And they're saying like it all has to do with money. My wildest guess, like really the only thing I can come up with right now for what this means is like maybe At-Attin is how the Sith have been funding their galactic scheming. Like you said, like they're almost laundering money through At-Attin. Because like analysts and stuff like that like suggests almost like a stock exchange kind of deal, like analyzing how different funds are doing and investing and stuff like that. So I'm like, what if the Sith have been using At-Attin to like fund all of their galactic wide scheming? What's up, Alex? You've got a crazy look on your
my
face.
Gosh. So I've always wondered, how did Sifo-Dyas have the money to pay for the clones?
Yep.
Who, like, you know, when you're putting in an order for 1 million plus clones to build an army of clones, where did those funds come from? Because like that's never made any sense to me. Like, how can someone just order and then like he's a Jedi and we don't really know much about him? Where did he get the funds to even put that order in?
Yeah.
What if it's from At-Attin? Right.
Like somehow Palpatine was like, hey, there's this, we've got this fund for these kind of purposes if you need to, you know, tap into that.
Let's come back to this when we talk about the Jewels of the Old Republic, because I think there's going to be kind of a connection there whenever we talk about this of like, okay, so then, you know, if the Empire is funneling money through At-Attin, but like Aton has been a jewel of the old Republic for so long, and they don't even know what happened with the Empire. Let's circle back to this when we get there, because I think there's a connection that we might be able to build there, and I really want to get to that part of the discussion. So, okay, so Jod comes in during their podcast, and Wim flips his bowl to hide the credits, and Neil flips his too for no reason. And I love that little detail. Jod tells them
he's just following his buddy.
Exactly.
Like, Wim is his ringleader, so he's just doing whatever he does.
Jod tells them that it's time to get some sleep, and Fern, defiant, says she's not even tired. And then we have a quick cut to her just absolutely out as they continue to travel through hyperspace. Neil is snoring. It's really cute.
Like through his trunk. It makes a very particular noise. It's good.
Jod inspects them all, but KB is up, and Jod notices, and KB has calculated the odds that he's not a Jedi. And Jod says that everything in the galaxy cannot be calculated, and you sometimes just have to trust your gut. And then he flips 2 fingers and the lights go out, and he tells her to get some rest as he heads to the cockpit. Again, just kind of a nice little moment with KB building her character. We're getting a better idea. She is a little more like Lobot than the other kids, and so we're just kind of building her a little bit, and maybe that's for some reason in the future. But later, the ship drops out of hyperspace and heads over a moon with the backdrop of a gas giant. We get a little theremin action in our Star Wars music, Mag, like the that's fun. It sounded like Loki, the TV show Loki, a little bit.
I hope everybody enjoyed my theremin impression. It's I've been working hard on it. But I love the imagery here. Like, I love the silhouetted group like in front of the gas giant walking and stuff. It makes me really appreciate our podcast cover art right now.
It does. It really, really does. They head towards an observatory, and I think it's really cool. We've never actually seen an observatory on screen before in Star Wars. I think that's really cool. And after landing, KB exits as Wim rides a cargo lifter arm, and Jod is getting annoyed by it. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you on that thing? And then he orders them to follow him. And like you said, we get this awesome shot of them just following him. The silhouette is awesome. The imagery is really, really cool. Stuff like this goes a long way, especially in a TV show, of just finding these awesome shots to put into the show. And as they walk towards the observatory, he warns them, now listen, this friend of mine, we go way back, but I don't trust her. Yeah. And he asks the kids if they understand, and they're just not getting, like, why would, I don't even know the term backstabbing. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
And then he says that they'll understand when they're older, which is so funny to me, because, like, when he said that, I was like, oh, this is an ex-girlfriend of Jod's or something like that.
You kind of get that vibe a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like, what was going on between Jod and Kim? Like,
I don't know. Yeah, so they head back towards the entrance, and inside, a clawed hand turns a control dial, and we hear a conversation between a woman and someone on the other side, and she's reporting that Jod has a flock of children, probably kidnapped, and the woman promises to dispatch a patrol, and she's gonna stall them, Kim. And Jod gets to the entrance, and a gatekeeper droid pops out, and he says, hello, Kim. Now, Kim is not spelled K-I-M. It's spelled K-H''YMM. It's a very Star Wars Kim.
You had to Star Wars it up a little bit. You can't just have K-I-M, Kim, in Star Wars. Gotta make it a little spacey.
Yeah, so they kind of have a little flirting session a little bit. I'm kind of getting some Maz Kanata vibes from Kim a little bit, too.
Yes. Like, not that she's, like, seriously interested in Jod or anything like that, but, like, this is just kind of how she is. You know, like, we all know the old lady who likes to flirt with everybody, but it's not, like...
Yeah. Nothing's meant by it.
It's just fun. It's playful. It's,
Yeah.
It's like it's all the old church ladies that would look at my butt when I was playing drums at church when I was like 14. Anyway.
And funny enough, named Kim. No.
A lot of Beverlys and Phyllis's and Margarets and stuff like that. All right, moving on.
Phyllis. Kim says, Crimson Jack, you're looking well. And again, another new name for Jod. And Crimson Jack is actually a reference to another Star Wars pirate way back in the old Star Wars Marvel comic days, like right after Star Wars had come out. And if you look up Crimson Jack on Wikipedia, they don't look anything alike. He kind of looks like He-Man a little bit.
But I love that, like, Jod could... Because I think Jod basically gives a different name to everyone he meets. Like, that's what this implies. So I love that, like, maybe he knew the legend of Crimson Jack, right? And just chose that as his mantle for whatever capacity he met Kim in,
Yeah, I like that. So he hints that he left her in a mess, but promises he has brought her something really special. And as more and more gatekeeper droids pop out to look at him, like from all angles, the door opens and they enter, and we are introduced to Kim, which is essentially she's just an owl. And I love this alien design. I think it's so cool and somehow unique to Star Wars. Like, I can definitely see this species being a Jedi later down the road and stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, I love it's like there's it's kind of a reference to like Archimedes almost, like Merlin's owl kind of deal in the like the Disney Sword in the Stone. It's, I don't know, like we just like the symbol of an owl is chosen to evoke like wisdom, knowledge, and stuff like that. But I love that this is kind of a different kind of owl character than we normally see in that capacity. She's a little kooky, little
questionable.
Out there.
Yeah. Fern is shocked that there's 1,000 worlds because she's got trinkets from 1,000 worlds, right? She mentions that. Yeah. And like Fern's like, there's 1,000 worlds?
Yeah, we've heard of like 3 others.
Right. Yeah, and Kim flies down and questions the children, and she asks where they're from, and Neil immediately gives the answer, At-Attin. And
like, maybe you hold that a little close to closer to the chest, Neil.
Right. And Kim can't believe it. She flaps away and above the telescope rotates, and then she flies back with an old scroll. And I knew, I was like, oh, we're getting to the good stuff here. And then Kim says the line, the title of the episode, and then she unfurls the scroll and she says, you see, your home has been purposely hidden from the rest of the galaxy. There is no map to At-Attin. No, this scroll depicts the jewels of the old Republic, planets of wonder kept hidden for their protection. Oh my gosh.
Like the biggest Christmas gift, like the best early Christmas gift that any Star Wars fan could get, right?
So awesome.
Not only is it some bit of canon information about the Old Republic, this sets up so many possibilities for amazing stories in the future. I need to know what all these worlds are, why they're important and different, and like what's special about them, all kinds of stuff. Like, this is one of the more exciting developments. Like, again, felt like the first mention of Peridia.
So I'm looking at an image right now that I snapped of the bottom of the scroll. So there's a picture of some beings at the bottom of the scroll, Mac, and there's a central figure lifting their hands up, and others are bowing down in reverence, almost like worshiping. But there's a symbol behind them. Check out that symbol. I'm showing it on the screen. You can see on the YouTube. It's like a circle, and then there's like several circles, maybe being planets, and then in the center, there's like a circle with like tentacles in it. And I'm just having this thought. It kind of feels like Abeloth a little bit, that we talked a lot about with Ahsoka. I'm getting that vibe big time from this. I don't want to spend too much time on that. That might be a voicemail hotline thing, but it is very interesting to look at that image at the bottom of the scroll.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to be talking about this for a long time, I think. Like, we're still talking about Peridia. This is going to be another one of those things. I definitely get Maw vibes from the big kind of black hole looking one. I'm wondering, like, who are these, like, hooded figures? Could they be Celestials? Could they be, like, some of the first Jedi? Could they be Sith? Who knows? Like, they look very Jedi-like. But I could even see the Jedi having, like, modeling their appearance after the Celestials, like, somehow, too.
There's also an Ithorian, which kind of matches the mural a little bit.
Yep.
And then there's some more people there too. But yeah, I don't know. There's something interesting about that whole depiction, but the scroll also has, I counted 8 planets, maybe 9 if that one in the middle is a planet too. So those are the jewels of the Old Republic. And then we get some more information. It said long ago they were all destroyed except for one, At-Attin, now only remembered in children's stories, pirate shanties, and rumors believed by fools. So let's talk about this. Okay, so they were hidden from the rest of the galaxy on purpose, and everyone knows that. That's interesting, number one.
Yeah. Well, maybe not everyone knows that, but like...
Okay, yeah.
It is known knowledge in the galaxy. That's very interesting. Like, it begs the question, like, to what extent were they destroyed? Like, are we talking about just, like, ruined worlds? Or are we talking about Death Star style, those planets no longer exist kind of deal?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're called planets of wonder, right? So, it almost makes it feel like the 8 wonders of the galaxy or something. Like, they were almost kind of like national parks in a way, maybe for the Old Republic of like, let's protect these planets. But then all of them end up being destroyed. How long ago were they destroyed? I think is a good question to ask.
That's a great question to ask. Because like it could be as recently as, the Clone Wars or something like that, or we could be talking about the High Republic era, or we could be talking about millennia ago. It seems kind of like millennia ago is like what Kim is implying, but I don't know. What makes these worlds of wonder? Are we talking about like convergences in the Force are on these worlds? Like Wim's been talking about Jedi temples and stuff like that. We know that the ones that can like raise and lower from the ground, they're built on top of like these convergences in the Force, like these geographical points where the Force is really strong. There's other instances of this, like Vader's castle is built on top of one in like on Mustafar for the dark side. The original, like the Jedi temple on Coruscant is built on top of something like this. I even think about, Alex, the Aftermath trilogy. What we learn at the end is that Jakku is special for a specific reason. Do you remember what is on Jakku that makes it special?
It's the observatory is over what is it called? Is it another Vergence? But it's not a Vergence. It's
something like that. But there's an observatory on top of it.
Right.
What if that observatory is for finding these lost worlds?
I think that's there's a potential too that maybe one of these lost worlds, in addition to At-Attin, could be Exegol. Because think about how Rey and Kylo have to get to Exegol with the Wayfinder, and guess what? They go through a nebula, just like At-Attin has. So there's a potential that they're going through to, like that's one of the jewels, and it was kind of, I mean, when you look at Exegol, it seems destroyed. There's what if this is crazy. What if At-Attin is Exegol, and one side is the nice idyllic side that we see, and the other side is the scary part. So
we're talking like light side of the moon, dark side of the moon kind of deal.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's stupid. But no, I doubt that. But like, here's where I wanted to connect it to what Neil was talking about earlier when they were having the little podcast session, talking about the money and stuff. what if the Empire found At-Attin? And instead of destroying it, they decided, let's keep them in this barrier, and we're going to funnel money through At-Attin, and we're not going to let the population know about the Empire. We're not going to let them know about what's going on outside the galaxy. Only the supervisor knows what's really going on, and they're like just laundering money, but like they have no idea that they're doing it, and that's where the Empire is getting all their money. So like it's kind of both things, where it's like At-Attin is an ancient place, a jewel of the old Republic. The Empire comes in, finds them, doesn't tell them what's going on in the rest of the galaxy, doesn't tell them the events or the Empire has risen and then, fallen. None of that. And they're just kind of funneling money through this planet that no one can find except for them. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. It does. So like the stuff about not knowing about the Galactic Civil War does lead me to believe that they've been isolated since before the rise of the Empire.
Yes.
But to your point, the Empire could have just hidden all of that from them. Like they could like Palpatine could have right, like Palpatine in his foreknowledge of like what was going to happen could have already kind of sectioned off At-Attin before the Empire rose, in the galaxy at large. There's all kinds of possibilities.
Like, I also get the sense that At-Attin, this is where I'm at right now with At-Attin, that it was lost, like, even during the Clone Wars. Empire comes across it, you're going to stay lost, but we're going to funnel money through you, and you have no idea. And you know what I mean? So it's like a little bit of both what we were theorizing before the show, and then like when the show first came out with the first 2 episodes. I think it's kind of both. I don't know. Maybe this is how the First Order will get funding, or maybe Thrawn will get funding for his campaign against the galaxy. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I can't wait for the voicemails, because I think there's more discussion to be had on this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we'll know for sure a definite answer until we know what in particular about At-Attin makes it a jewel of the Old Republic, like what is intrinsically special about that world. I think that will be how we for sure know kind of what happened, like because we don't even know why it's a jewel of the Old Republic. We don't know what that means.
Right.
So like until we get that
eternal
information,
treasure, right?
Right, like whatever that means. Like, so until we get that information, we're just gonna have to keep speculating. But it's a very fun thing to speculate on.
Oh, so fun! Yeah. So Jod realizes that they don't actually need a map because the kids are the map. So they start using their descriptions to search the archive. And KB points out that in school they learn about Coruscant and Alderaan, and like Jod and Kim kind of look at each other like, oh, okay. Kim says that they missed the war, like not knowing that Alderaan was destroyed by the Death Star. Neil mentions the great work and barrier, and Kim repeats it, kind of like saying, great work, barrier, making me wonder if there is something connected to the High Republic theories of like, maybe they kind of heard of this but have forgotten, because that's like 200 years ago. She asks what the barrier looks like, and they tell her, and they narrow it down to 10,000 worlds. But then Kim notices the symbols on Fern's backpack, and she says, I've never seen Palmerish numerals used in Proto-Republic artifacts. And I was looking at Palmerish, there is nothing there, but like the fact that she said that it's Proto-Republic is a big deal, right? Like it's pre-Republic. That's old. So again, like there's just something really, really cool that I cannot wait to find out more about these jewels of the Old Republic and what At-Attin actually is. But she uses the symbol to see if they can help narrow it down. And then Jod catches on that she is stalling. Then Jod hears the X-Wings coming in for Crimson Jack. So it seems like the New Republic might be after him for a while, right?
Yeah. I think he's probably on the like equivalent of FBI's most wanted list. Like,
yeah. And she warns the kids that after Jod pulls out his blaster, she flies away and he shoots at her, and then she knocks him down into the data pads, and he punches her into another stack. It's like, geez, this is getting a little rough as the kids are just watching.
Right.
He then takes the finished coordinates and orders the kids to follow him. And as he's leaving, KB stops to help Kim. And Kim tells KB, use your head, get the truth. And I think that's going to be like something that KB sticks to the rest of the show. And she says that anytime they need help, just ask her. And KB runs out to catch up with them, and the two X-Wings do a flyby over them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love because Kim definitely seems to be, like, she wants to look out for the kids. She has some indication that she might, like, the kids might be in some kind of danger with Jod. But she also, it's not enough danger that she's like, you absolutely can't leave. I can't allow this person to take these kids kind of deal, right? She's just like, hey, you may run into trouble in the future, like on the path that you're headed down. I'm available, if you need help.
Absolutely. So they run back to the ship, and Neil falls down as they're running back. Like, he just kind of like rolls down the sand a little bit, and I love that.
Yeah.
But they don't let Jod on the ship while he's trying to get on, and SM-33 comes out and backs up the kids. They want to know who he is before they let him on the ship, and all this while the X-Wings are getting closer and closer. And finally, Jod snaps. He says, the truth is, I'm just like you, okay? I'm lost. I'm alone. That's a little clue there that we're going to come back to. They said that episode 7 is where we're going to get a lot of Jod's backstory, but that might lead credence to former Padawan. I don't know.
That's what it indicates to me. Like, it seems like he's lost his family. Like, these kids have been separated from theirs,
Yeah. He also admits to saying he technically never said he was a Jedi, and then Fern corners him into working for them. And he agrees after seeing SM-33's not so subtle threat. And so they race down the corridor to the cockpit and take off. The two X-Wing fighters spot it, and the kids think that 33 needs to help them. And we get another clue to Jod's past here. He says, no. He says, rely on a droid and they'll just let you down every time. Kind of similar to Din. Yeah.
A little bit. Could be Clone Wars trauma. Could be some particular thing that's happened to Jod separate from that. But interesting little peek in.
I was thinking Clone Wars trauma a little bit. Like, maybe he doesn't trust droids a lot of people from that generation. So they have to get to the other side of the moon before jumping, and then he orders Neil to fly the ship, which is just fantastic. He takes Fern and Wim with him, and he shows her how to use the gun turret, and he does another one for Wim, and he eagerly climbs in. He cannot wait to shoot at some people.
He's been waiting for this moment. Like, he is so trigger happy. He's shooting like before he practically even gets the turret fully raised up. It's funny.
Then they swing the turret around and fires on the good guys, but they wouldn't know that, right? Like, they don't know X-Wings mean good guys. And then Jod gets back to the cockpit, takes control, and as the sun comes up, and as I'm saying these words, the sun is coming up as we're recording, they streak upwards and jump into hyperspace. And then the X-Wings touch down, one trailing smoke from the fire they received. And Kim is upset that they let him get away. But Commander Kent, that's who this is.
Yeah.
Don't know who that is. Same.
I was hoping it was going to be Carson Teva or even like Trapper Wolf and the rest of Wolf Squadron. But, alas, we get a new character.
Yep. And he says it was too risky with the kids inside. So the reason they kind of like let him get away is because, like, hey, we could have stopped them, but like, there's kids on board.
We're not going to obliterate
the
kids. Yeah. I mean, it is showing that, like, they're not the Empire. The Empire would have just blown up the ship. So, like, I like that. Even though the Mandoverse, like, where sometimes our characters are going up against the New Republic and in some ways, it is... I like that they're still keeping them, like, a morally sound in terms of how a galactic government can be. Because, like, it's going to have problems. But I like that they're making an effort to be like, yeah, the New Republic does things differently than the Empire.
Yeah. And so he asks if she knows where they're headed. And then she says, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And we cut to black, end of episode. And here's a crazy thought, Mac. for speculation for episode 4, what if they actually get home next episode?
Yeah, I'm thinking that the return journey may be shorter than we thought. Like we kind of initially thought the entire season was going to be the return home until the very end. I still tend to think that like it'll be a little bit before we get back to At-Attin and get those mysteries, but the way that this has gone, it does tell me that like it's possible that we could get back to At-Attin much sooner than we initially theorized.
Yeah, they could get to At-Attin, find the eternal treasure on At-Attin, and then be forced to maybe go back out to find another piece to unlock something on At-Attin. You know, like there's so many possibilities. Like again, I kind of lean towards maybe the return home journey won't be so easy. But like if they do get back next episode, I fully expect, okay, well, then maybe it's a thing where they confront the supervisor, find out that there's something else that they need, have to leave again to go find that thing with Jod. That's kind of the two scenarios in my mind.
I'm also thinking of another one where it's almost like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the first kind of 2 acts are them, you know, setting the foundation and then finding the treasure. Like they're doing the globe trotting, following all these clues. But then the last act all kind of takes place like within this one like dungeon, temple, shrine kind of deal, right? So like they could get back to At-Attin, but then there could still be several episodes of them delving into whatever secret lies there, you know? Like we've seen that
I'm
treasure
totally
room.
good with that.
Yeah, like that could work too. Like I love that. So, you know, I think those are kind of the possibilities. It's either like, you know, we go back and then have to go do something else, or we get back but there's more to do on the planet, or maybe our initial thought of it's going to take them a little bit to get back. They could even find At-Attin and just not be able to get through the barrier and have to go do something to get that ability too, you know?
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe they get there, but they can't get through the barrier, so they have to turn around and find a way to get through the barrier.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know, but I'm so excited for episode 4, and I'm excited for your hotline calls. So make sure you call in with your thoughts and theories, 205-259-6675. If you mess up, hang up, try again. You could make it onto our voicemail hotline or even our bonus voicemail hotline episode on our Patreon, patreon.com/The Mandalorian Watch. For just $2 a month, you get access to every bonus episode we've ever done, and all the ones we're going to do going forward for Skeleton Crews. So you could hear your voicemail on there and us discussing it. So call in. We love your phone calls. But the fun doesn't stop here. Of course, we got our voicemail hotline episodes coming up later in the week, but later tonight, as of Wednesday, December 11th, we're going to be joining the Resistance broadcast on their show, Galactic Goonies, on YouTube at 8:30. So join us for that. We're going to have a very fun conversation talking more about episode 3. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So subscribe to our feed. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you would. That goes a long way to, you know, helping other people get the show, helping us get up in the charts and stuff like that. Head over to YouTube, like those videos, leave us comments, engage with us there. Check out the Patreon, get access to the Discord. And we'll be back later this week for another voicemail episode, as Alex said. But until then, keep the watch.